I'm Ivan Sutton, and of course, today I'm speaking to you about networking because we are a business network, of course, at this great city. And, there's a lot of observations that I've made over the past few years about networking and some of the etiquette that you can have for networking. But I'll tell you first about my first time going out to a networking event. And I remember it distinctly because it was maybe 12 years ago, believe it or not, a real business networking event. They advertised that they were a business networking event in downtown Toronto. And it was my birthday. So my wife said, "Hey, I have a surprise for you. Let's go." So we went on my birthday to a business networking event. And it was in a warehouse. And I wasn't sure what to expect when I was going down there, but I made sure that I had my clothes pressed. I had a stack of brand new business cards. You could smell the fresh paint on those cards. And I went out there to see what this was all about, a business networking event. And when I got there, I couldn't even find parking. It was so jammed. And then when I went into the venue, there must have been 150 to 250 people in there. And it was like, people going back and forth, people standing in groups, and people always networking. You see a lot of people handing out business cards, some people around the food, eating away. But it was like a marketplace for cards and for handshakes and all that stuff. Quite amazing. Amazing. I was in awe. And, I handed out, I must have handed out at least 100 business cards because I went crazy. I went all over the place meeting people. And one of the first things I have to say that I noticed was that the more I walked around and I met people, the bigger my smile got. And the bigger my smile got, the more people just would walk up to me because I guess I was approachable. So they would come over and say, "Hey, so what do you do?" And they'd look at my shirt and see what my shirt says. And then they would hand me their card and they'd tell me what they were all about. And that was super, super cool. But after you've been to a few of these, you've been to a couple of these for, a couple of years. And then all of a sudden you start to realize that there are some patterns that are starting to emerge when you go to a networking event. Yes, you get up and you get your stuff ready and you go and you've got your best attitude on and you walk in the door. But then you go into some of these smaller ones and people have already gotten into little groups. If you don't get there early, and that's, for me, it's best for me to go early because then you see them all when they walk in the door. And each person that walks in the door, they look to the first friendly face that they can get in because the place is pretty empty. They'll talk to you. It's very rare that you get to a networking event that only has 2 or 3 people in there and they don't want to talk to you. Very rare. It's never happened to me. So, but if I get there late, there tends to already be these groups of people, these cliques, and sometimes they'll hear the door open and then everyone will look and they'll decide, they'll keep going back to their conversation. But after a while, you start to see that pattern and you realize that for some people, it's a really stressful place because if you walk into a business networking event and everyone's already matched up, you don't see any people sitting by themselves and they all seem to be in full throttle, you know what I mean, having their conversations, feels a little weird, kind of busting in and saying, "Hey, I'm Ivan," right? It's a little tough. So what do? You go to the bar and you order up a non-alcoholic drink and you sit there and you just wait for the next person to come in that looks like they feel a little awkward, and then you nod, right? You give them that nod. And they hopefully they come over and they start talking to you. And then the next person that walks in sees you are in a clique, and so therefore they feel awkward. But the point is that the patterns are pretty much the same. But the one thing I will say that I've noticed over and over and over again is every time I go to a networking event, if I am walking around, I got a big smile on my face, I tend to do really well. People tend to walk over to me. They ask me questions. The burden is less on me to make the introduction, to go in and say, "Hey, how are you?" And who you are, whatever. I find that people tend to come over and chat with me. So, and then of course, when you have a few people talking around you, and I'm constantly looking to see if anybody else is walking by to pull them into the conversation, it's kind of where the party starts. So, a couple things I just want to go through when it comes to business networking. I'm talking about live networking. I'll chat about virtual business networking, in another video. But for right now, I just want to talk about the live business networking and how to get the best out of it. Okay. So, and these are just my observations in the past 12 years. There are people that have been networking way longer than me, and they could probably dance circles around me with suggestions. But this is what I'll throw out there. So here it is. Number one, you have to be prepared, right? There have been times when I've gone to a networking event because I was told about it last minute. I don't have a lot of cards, and I go. And of course, wouldn't you know it, that is the event that takes off. That's the one that actually is amazing. And I wish I had a lot of cards. So always be prepared for the event, dress the part, and carry your business cards or your phone or whatever it is that you're going to need to capture information from people, but definitely be prepared. And being prepared could mean a number of things. Like, what are your goals for the networking event? Like, what are you trying to get out of the networking event? Because sometimes you might not want to just pick up leads. You may want something else out of the event. So just figure out what it is that you want, and then that way, when you walk in the room, you have a goal to achieve, right? Not just wandering around handing out cards. All right. Second, that I find is that it is about them, and I'll give you an example. So, everybody, when they're at home, they're getting ready for that networking event. What are they doing? They're getting their business cards. They're putting on their nicest shirt. They throw on their own car or whatever their favorite cologne is, and they go out, and and when they walk in the room, they are, they're meeting people. They're telling them who they are. They're handing out their business cards, and of course, they have to also get business cards back. They're not really that interested in getting the business cards, right? They're just more, they'll take the business cards and listen to what you have to say for long enough so they can get back to telling you about them. So that's kind of an interesting, kind of weird thing that you're in there. And because if you bump into them again, they'll go, oh, yeah, you are the guy that did, they don't quite remember. But what I find is that when I go out, I don't talk about me. It's weird, eh? Kind of a weird kind of networking, but I do not talk about me. I'll sit there and ask them questions and learn about their business and take their business card, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, they'll get to a point where they kind of hear themselves sharing about themselves, and then they'll ask. Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's polite or not. I'll just say, listen, why don't we get together for coffee? I know that you want to do some more mingling. Let's grab a coffee sometime. Let's sit down, and I'd love to share with you what I do. But for now, it's just really nice, amazing meeting you. And of course, then I go away and I make notes in my phone about exactly who that person is. And I'm talking about down to the minute details, because I want to know who they are. Most people won't remember until the third or fourth impression. They got to go to 3 or 4 events where they bump into the guy, and then they'll start to remember the details, right? They might remember the name of the company, but they won't remember the details about this individual. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to establish some sort of relationship. So they don't feel like your relationship is going to start off as being salesy, right? It's going to be more of getting to know you. And then once I get to know you and understand the type of person you are, then I can decide, are you the type of person I want to do business with? And am I the kind of person that you want to do business with? Right? Kind of makes sense, right? So it's definitely not an aggressive, hey, I'm Ivan Sutton, I'm with myagency.ca. Why don't you give us a call? We'll build you a website. No, absolutely not. I'm a communicator. That's why I'm in marketing. I'm a communicator. So therefore, if you remember that I had great communication with you, and then when we meet, I tell you I'm in communications, I am a marketer, you're going to go, well, that totally makes sense, because you're a great listener. You remember things I tell you. You are very interested in me and the outcomes of my business. That totally makes sense. So it is about them. It's about them all day long. One last thing I'll say about that is I was at a speed networking event with my wife. We had gone, they give you 1.5 minutes to present, and the other person gets 1.5 minutes to present, and then you jump to the left, right? So when it was my turn, of course, the person in front of me, they would go first because I would ask them to go first. And then they would say, okay, that's a minute and a half. There's the bell. It's now your turn. And I would say, okay, yeah, just give me a minute. I just want to find out a little bit more. You were saying about this and this and this. Exactly how does that work? And they're so happy to share. So then they eat up the last minute and a half, and then it's the bell goes and you got to go to the left. That was exactly what I did with everybody. So by the time that my wife had gotten down to that person and she said, oh, I'm with my agency.ca. Do you know what? They said, oh, you're with Ivan. You know what? I chatted with him. He never told me anything about himself. We just talked about me. And so then everyone says, yeah. So what is it that you guys do? It was much more interesting. And we got to engage with many more people after the row of speed networking. It worked out really, really well. So for me, I like to focus on other people. So the last one is, sorry, not the last one, the third one is, of course, we touched on this a little bit before. You have to set networking goals. If you go to a networking event without any goals, you don't know if it was a successful event. I mean, it does cost you, right? You have to get dressed. You have to, brush your teeth. Well, hopefully you do that every day, but you have to get your business cards. They cost. You have to pay for gas and parking sometimes. And you go to the event. If you're going because your goal is to have an amazing evening conversing with like-minded individuals, and you go out and that's what you achieve, fantastic. Because you're not going to come home disappointed. You're not programming your brain to think that that was a failure, right? So, but if you go expecting to meet and qualify possibly one or set up one prospect, and the process by which you spend the evening doesn't yield that, you might come home feeling kind of bummed out, right? I didn't get anything out of that. That was kind of like a waste. I didn't really meet anybody. But if you set your goals, then it'll tell you what you have to do when you get there. You cannot become a wallflower at an event if you go to it and you have a goal of speaking with enough people so that you can come down to one person that you could meet with afterwards and grab a coffee with that could potentially be a client, right? So setting the goals, and then that will inform your behavior through the night and afterwards. All right. Now, and then of course, your pitch, right? Don't we love the pitch? I think the pitch is getting a bad rap these days, right? Everyone's like, oh, please, I can't take another 45-second pitch. But here we go. When you're meeting somebody, what is the pitch, right? Is it something that is rigid and formal, and but to the point, or I've actually heard pitches that are rigid and formal, but presented in such a way that it was great. They had their personality in there, so that it didn't come off as being rigid and formal, but it told me everything that they do. There are other things that I would like to do as well, and that is in my pitch, I'll ask a question. So I'll tell them a bit about what I do, and I'll just say, we all know somebody who has a bad site, or somebody who has bad information on their site, or whatever. They just, their communication is definitely impacting them, and they complain about it, but they're so busy that they don't have time to fix it, or they just don't have the knowledge. They don't understand it. It's kind of daunting to think about going in there and trying to fix a website. So, and they go, yeah, I know somebody, I know a guy, I know this person, I know that person. They need help with their site for sure. Or I need help with my site, which is kind of like music to my ears. But the point is that in your pitch, you have to engage the other person if you can. All right. Now it's different if you happen to be giving your pitch at this great city event, or a BNI event, or whatever it is, then that's different. But if you are if you have the ability to talk to somebody directly and they're saying, so what do you do, then definitely get in your pitch, but you definitely want to engage them as much as possible. All right. So the other one I have, number 5, is ask, listen, discuss, repeat until interrupted. Because we always get interrupted. Someone's going to walk by. But I always ask questions, and then I listen to what they say, And when I speak, I'm speaking to discuss what they said and then repeat, ask more questions and then listen and then discuss and then ask more questions. Now, I'm not saying, where were you on the night of June 14th? Whatever. It's not that going to ask questions. It's really, you're listening to what they're saying and just ask them questions about what they do. I love it because, it helps me to know whether someone's really into their job or not, or if they really like their business, or has the spark gone out of their pursuit of happiness. Like what's happening here? So, but I love to ask because it also teaches me a lot about different industries. And then they love sharing what they do. Most people do, right? I mean, it's like dating, right? If you are just waiting for the person to say something so you can say something else, it's not going to work out to be a really nice relationship. And the same with business, right? So in business, ask, listen, discuss, and then repeat until interrupted. And hopefully that interruption will be, "Hi, Ben, tell me about you. What is it that you do?" At that point, you say, "Okay, well, it's been really nice hearing about you. I'll tell you. So what I do is this," right? And then you tell them. And the last part is follow up. This is where, we all know the stats, right? Most people, they go out to a networking event and they get a ton of business cards and they go home and they don't follow up. They've gone through all the work to, get dressed, put on that dracar and head out to the event and meet people and go through the nervousness and all this stuff and have the drinks and the chicken wings and all that. And then they don't follow up, even if they made some warm contacts. So it's kind of shocking. And of course, they say to themselves, "I need to follow up with those people from the show for 3-4 days." And then it becomes stale. And you think, it's too late now to follow up. I'll seem like a putz. So therefore, it's real important when you get home, even the day of the event, the night that you get home, just send off a nice little email saying, "It was really nice meeting you tonight at the event." And as we discussed, listen, I'd love to get together and have a coffee and share a little bit more about what each of us does, because I think I have some ideas and some ways I can possibly help you, or even I'd love to build onto my referral network. I can possibly give you some leads. Let's chat. You definitely want to send that out, right? And for the ones that were really awesome, definitely set something up immediately, even if it has to be Zoom. Set it up and try and get out to see them within 24 to 48 hours, if possible. All right. So these are my 6 tips for live networking events. All right. And and the last one I'll say, and this goes without saying, but and I've been to a few events. You never take your camera, right? I'm not kidding. Don't drink too much. I won't comment on that, but don't consume too much. Make sure that you are still, professional. And that's it for me for today. I'm Ivan Sutton. Thank you for tuning in to my network.